Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about everything board game related. I'm David Waybright, and we're here to talk today about the 75th anniversary edition of Escape from Colditz. Jeremy, what do you think about this thing, man?
The production values on this are incredible. Now, I know there's pictures of this on the internet. We actually saw a first brief glimpse of it at Gen Con this year. And I talked to their marketing director, and I told him that I definitely want to get a copy of this when it came out. This has a ton of history behind the game. It revolves around, it was actually designed in conjunction with one of the gentlemen who escaped from Colditz Castle 75 years ago.
It's got a great story behind it. And the thing is, too, this is a different sort of game because this is an old school game. This is a roll the dice and move.
Yeah.
You know, but it's not, I mean, it's a really good game, too. There's a lot of strategy involved in it.
Yeah, so the board. Let's talk about the board. This is a beautiful board. Oh. It's large enough where the game breathes, and you can actually see all the rooms. It's a castle. That's a representative of Colditz Castle. You have an inner courtyard, which is the castle itself, with numerous different rooms and an appel in the center where all the prisoners are gathered together for roll call. You have an outer castle, which is done by the barbed wire and the outer walls that you see. Right. And then you have outside the castle, which is all the brown spaces, which you're trying to get your escape officers to. And that's where all these British markers are.
Right, and then the German soldiers are spread throughout the entire map.
Right.
On the, they start on these specific locations, but everyone's going to be moving around pretty quickly once the game gets underway.
So it is a 2 to 6 player game in which it's one versus many. Yeah. However, each of the escape officers, which represents a different nation, is trying to get 2 of their prisoners outside of the castle. Right. In order to do that, they have to have a personal escape kit, which each of the escape officers starts with one. Right. That can never be confiscated, but they can be remade. Once a prisoner gets out, they have to actually use that piece of equipment and then remake a new one for the second person that could possibly come outside of the castle.
Yeah, the game for the soldiers is about not just escaping, but collecting the resources in order to do so.
Right.
You're going to get resources, like you said, to build your escape kit, but you're also going to be getting some other resources that's going to allow you to, use a rope to climb down a wall, a key to get through a door, maybe a pass or something to get through a fence. So that's what the prisoner is going to be doing right away. And at the beginning of the game, the German soldiers are just kind of like moving around, trying to figure out where and how you might be going about getting out of the castle.
Right. They did an incredible job of putting all the different locations on the board. And there's a lot of different locations. It may look daunting, but it's really, really easy to understand. We'll walk through some of these locations right now. You have guard posts, which the guards will move in and out of. You have safe areas, which the prisoners can hide in without any kind of repercussions. You have rooms that have different kinds of equipment icons on them, which they'll use to make equipment to be able to get out of the castle. You have areas where the prisoners cannot be in. These are searchlights.
Right, at the end of their turn,
they get captured.
Yeah, the theme around this is really great, and all the aspects that you're pointing out on the board are just really cool when you consider what's taking place and what players are trying to do, for sure.
Right. There's locations on the board where the guards cannot end in. This allows the prisoners to come in and out of those rooms without consequence. When a prisoner gets arrested or gets caught, they go to a solitaire. There's 3 different solitaires, 2 which are located on the inner castle, and 1 which is located on the outer castle.
Right.
There's also a commander's office and a barracks. Anytime that a guard arrests a prisoner, that prisoner goes to the solitaire, and the guard goes to the commander's office, which will then move at the end of their turn to the barracks, and which allows them to redeploy to one of the guard posts. So how does the whole game work? As David said, it's a roll and move. You're simply going to roll 2 dice and then move that many locations, split up among your prisoners. If you roll a 9, one of your prisoners can move 9 spaces, or you can divide that up amongst many different prisoners.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of places to move here. I mean, if you can look closely at the board, the spaces are all very, very tightly put on this board. And like Jeremy said earlier, it looks kind of overwhelming.
It does.
But it really isn't. I mean, it has to be tight so that it gives a lot of flexibility. But you're rolling these dice. The other thing cool about the dice, obviously there's luck involved. It's dice.
Right.
But the game is so much fun when you roll doubles, for instance. the dice explode, I think is the term they use.
Right.
And you can roll again. And you can do that up to 3 times. So if you roll doubles 2 times in a row, you'll roll that 3rd time. You add up all of that, and you can end up with a massive amount of move points on any given turn.
Right.
So it really turns the tides.
Right. So each of the nations will take turns in order, rolling the dice and moving to various locations. If they happen to get 2 of their prisoners into the same kind of room. For instance, let's talk about rope again. If they have one of their prisoners in a rope room and another one of their prisoners in either the same rope room or a different rope room, they're allowed to make a rope. And they simply take one of the rope cards. This is an escape piece of equipment, which then means that they can get arrested for holding this.
If you're inside the castle, you're pretty safe if you're a prisoner, as long as you don't look suspicious because you have a rope under your jacket.
Exactly. And then those 2 prisoners that made that piece of equipment are sent back to the pill to be removed on a further turn. That will go around the table until it gets to the security officer's turn. He's going to do the exact same thing. He rolls his dice and moves any set of guards up to the number of dice that he rolled. Now, he has a unique ability of moving into a guard post and then relocating directly to the commander's office, which gives him the flexibility to remove that same guard into a different guard post on a future turn.
Right. It's a huge part of the security officer's turn because you might move around and then have left a wide open space for the prisoners to make their move.
Right.
And you use those guard posts and the commander's office and the barracks to get right back out there in their face.
The other thing the prisoners can do is make escape equipment, the personal escape equipment. These are different than the rope, the key, the pliers, and the German pass. Did we talk about all these different things, what they can do first?
We didn't in detail.
Okay,
the rope is obviously going to let you climb up and down certain spots. There's places on the board where you need to be able to climb down. Some say 30, some say 60.
Right.
You'll need either 1 or 2 pieces of rope in order to get down.
The key will give you access to locations with keys. The pliers will let you cut through barbed wire, and the pass will let you get through locations with a pass. Now, anytime you use any of these pieces of equipment, they simply go back to the stock. However, if you're caught with them and they get confiscated, they get removed from the game.
Right.
So there is a limited amount of them. The one I was going to talk about was a personal escape kit. Now, there's 4 locations in the inner castle that include a map, clothing, food, and a compass. If you have all 4 of your people in those unique locations, you can create another one of these. So now, people may say, roll and move, that's not very fun. The real fun in the game comes from the security officer deck and the opportunity deck for the prisoners. These are decks of cards. There's 40-some for the prisoners and 16
for the security
officer. Yeah. Anytime you roll on your turn a 5 or less, you're allowed to draw one of these cards. You can have at most 3 in your hand. These are the cards that let you kind of break the rules of the game.
The game breakers and almost like mini events to really enhance the narrative that's going on in the game because, for instance, some of them allow me to search into some of these rooms around the inner courtyard, which as a security officer, you can't ever enter those rooms. Mm-hmm. So Jeremy might go into one of these rooms for a rope because I know he's looking for some rope, and I might have a card in my hand that suggests I can play this and search that room. Any prisoner in that room gets sent back or sent to solitary, and I get to confiscate whatever item they might have picked up.
Yeah. Some of the cards for the prisoners allow you to dig tunnels, to move from locations, to fast move into rooms. Now, we didn't mention this, but when you're inside of a room, a guard can't follow you unless you're doing something suspicious, like climbing down a rope, which is great because when you start to get into these room locations, you know that you're safe and a guard can't arrest you.
Right. There's a bit of stealth involved in a way.
Sure. So how does arresting happen? Anytime that a guard moves onto a prisoner, they can become arrested. However, there are some rules to that. If they're inside the inner courtyard, they can only be arrested if they have a piece of escape equipment on them. The escape equipment does not get removed. It simply goes back into their location. That's only if they're in the inner courtyard. If they're in the outer courtyard, they will get arrested for any reason. They don't even have to have an escape equipment
They shouldn't be out there.
on them.
So the security officer can put them into solitaire for sure.
And also, if they're sitting on a guard post, they can be arrested for no reason, even for not having a piece of equipment on them.
And it's important to note, too, that the equipment is not associated with any given pawn on the board, but the player who controls any of those pawns.
Right.
So as long as the player has a piece of equipment, they are subject for arrest.
And there's kind of a cooperative aspect to the prisoner side. Now, you aren't cooperating specifically. The goal, remember, is to get 2 of your prisoners out and you will win the game. However, players can climb down other players' ropes.
Right.
They can use other players' tunnels. So there's some cooperative aspects within the game itself. So do you like the game?
I do. I love the game. You know, when you told me about this game and said that it was basically a roll and move, I didn't know what to think. You know, I thought it was an old school game. I was interested to try it, but I didn't realize the amount of strategy involved. And not like chess type strategy, but there's so many spaces. What's amazing about this game is the amount of thought that's gone into a lot of this game. The spots you mentioned earlier where a guard can't end their move there.
Right.
They have a lot of little specific rules that really keep the strategy tight in this game.
Yeah.
You have to, you know, there's limitations on both sides, and that really plays into the decisions that you're making. It's not just roll your dice and there's clearly a best move.
Right.
You really have to figure out what the other people are doing. And in a multiplayer game, that's a lot of people to try to figure out what they're doing and keep track of. Because I might be going after Jeremy, and then I've kind of let an open space for these other players to try to get out. Yeah. But it's a really good game. And like Jeremy said also earlier, the 2-player game, interestingly enough, is just as satisfying because, in fact, I almost like it best just because it's a one-on-one, even though we're talking about groups of pawns.
Right.
It's kind of a one-on-one feel to it.
There's a lot of things I like about the game. First, the rounds that you can play, typically you're going to play 50 rounds or 50 turns, but you can stretch that out if you're having trouble escaping. Of course, the more rounds you have, the better you can do. I also love the components. They spend a lot of time with the artwork. The artwork on the cards has been redone. This is all hand-drawn artwork. The boxes look like World War II.
Yeah, every choice they made is fantastic. The word classy comes to mind in my opinion because the materials even, everything they did, the graphic design, every single aspect of this feels just like they perfectly nailed it.
I mean, even
really
the bottom of the box.
Right.
And the inside box is an actual hand-drawn map of Colditz Castle, and it looks beautiful. So the production values are incredibly top-notch. I love these cards. These opportunity cards for the prisoner and the security cards adds just enough flavor to the game to make turns surprising. You don't know what's going to happen, and you can surprise people with specific actions. I love that aspect. What I don't like about the game is that there's so much luck involved. 2 things. One, rolling the magic number 6 is awful because typically if you roll a 4 and a 2, it's not a double, so they don't explode, and it's above the 5, which means that you don't get to draw a card.
Exactly.
And it's 6 spots. I mean, moving 6 spaces isn't very good.
Yeah, and in one of our games, we miraculously rolled so many 6s, and obviously 7's going to be the most common number, but 6 and 8 are the second most common. So you're going to see a lot of that number.
Yeah.
And like Jeremy said, you're not getting much out of it at all, except for 6. No, well, not much out of it at all, really.
The other issue I have is that the security deck is only 16 cards, and they're very good. When you're playing a 2-player game, the prisoner is drawing from 47 cards, I believe.
Right.
And a lot of these cards are just not very good for me. I mean, they allow you to get kits, which are pretty easy to make, or make personal kits. I drew 3 cards in one of the games that we played that allow me to make additional personal kits when I already had 2. And drawing these cards isn't very easy. I mean,
I would say that in a multiplayer game, you're going to burn through that stack a little bit more, but I could completely see a good variant being proposed for 2 players where you're going to reduce that stack at the beginning of the game so that one player can get through the stack a little bit more quickly.
And then being a roll and move style game, one of our games we were down to 5 turns and I had 1 prisoner escape and I was on the cusp of getting out. And I rolled like a 6 one turn and like a 4 the next turn, which just means I got shot. So again, it depends on the dice. It's a very high dice-driven game. But besides that, we had fun. We had an immense amount of fun playing this game.
That has to be said. You know, aside from the luck, you can't get too hung up on that for sure because it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
this game is about the journey getting there.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be a winner and a loser. It's about the experience getting to that point and not really about winning or losing, but it's a lot of fun. We had a blast playing it.
Yeah. So guys, that is the 75th anniversary edition of Colditz. Go check it out. Make sure you guys make comments below on this YouTube channel. Subscribe to us, please. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. And all the other social media things that we do.
Absolutely.
And check us out next time on Man vs. Meeple.
Thanks a lot.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by TMG Games, publisher of great games like Yokohama, Guilds of London, and the soon-to-be-released Colosseum.